Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to a super brand new course on the channel. You folks have been requesting this for many years now, and I'm finally excited to share it with all of you. I've spent a lot of months and a lot of work trying to put this course together. So hopefully you all enjoy the course. And of course, by the title of the video, you know that this course is all about learning to redesign a mobile app. And for those of you who haven't guessed it already, this is the Fold Money app. As you can see the logo on the shirt, there's a lot in this course. I'm going to talk about a lot of things. If you guys are interested in checking out specific things, you can check out the timestamps and you can navigate to the respective sections. But if you want to follow along with me, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And without any further ado, let's get started. Now, in the world of product design, one of the things that I've seen and learned is that fintech products need to build trust through design, because a lot of fintech products don't have an offline experience. In order for you to build trust with customers, design plays an extremely critical role because people are interacting with the digital product, which means it needs to be a very well designed app. Not only should it solve a problem, but it needs to have really good design, because that is one of the most critical ways for customers to really trust you. A lot of other products out there have interaction with an offline experience, partially or fully. But fintech products typically have a completely online experience, and so you don't really interact things at an offline level with most of the fintech products. And so design becomes extremely important. And design has to be given as much emphasis as any other vertical. It has to be a really good functional app without any bugs, really good engineering, super fast load times, very well designed, and very well thought through as well, right? It's not just about design or engineering. Everything has to play a role, and design is finally going to be given a lot of emphasis, especially in fintech products. Now, one of the chapters on my guide on learnproduct.design is about identifying what sort of companies value design. And I speak about many things over here, and one of the points being that fintech products usually have an online experience, and so design plays a very critical role. And what that basically ends up meaning is that product designers are given extremely good value, and design ends up playing a critical role. Now, let's take a scenario where you actually work for a company and there's an app that the company has and you have to redesign it, right? You and your team and basically the entire company is going to focus on redesigning this app. Now, it's important to understand when we think of a redesign, what actually goes in. Now, there are 5 things that I believe go into it. Of course, I'm sort of generalizing over here and I'm, looking at things at a top level, but it totally depends on company to company, product to product, industry to industry, right? But if we were to look at things at a holistic level, there are 5 things that I want to talk about. The first one is business goals. Now, a lot of people may not understand what this basically means, and I'm going to give you a very good example. For those of you who may not know, I work for a company called Illustrator Tutorials. We are a fintech product. We allow users to invest, and now we are also a bank, which means you can get your salary, you can make transactions. It's going to be like a bank plus an investment product. Initially, we were just an investment platform where you could invest your money in the stock market, but now we're also a bank. Now, a couple of months ago, we did a super massive redesign. We revamped the entire product inside out, new design, new brand language, new identity. Everything was new. And there were many reasons why we did the redesign. Some of the most important reasons were that the design that we had in the previous app was completely outdated. There were a lot of UI UX issues. And once we realized that the company needs to introduce more features, introduce more products, introduce new business verticals, we realized that the existing structure of the app didn't make a lot of sense and it would be very hard for it to scale. So we had to rethink the entire experience because the company now decided to add a lot more things into the product. So it made sense to do a complete redesign, right? And of course, from a marketing standpoint, from a brand standpoint, it does help you stand out with competitors. It helps you make a statement in the market out there. It has a lot of other reasons, right? So understanding why a company wants to do a redesign is extremely important, because that will help you understand whether the design decisions you're making match those business goals or not. Now, of course, this is just one of the reasons that has to contribute to the redesign, right? But there are a lot more other things. Company priorities also becomes a big factor over here. And when I talk about company priorities, what I'm basically trying to explain is how are decisions made? How do you prioritize things? When you have to make a design decision or a product decision, what is it that you look at and decide, hey, let's do this instead of this, or let's not do this because of this, right? So how are decisions made in the company between product managers, between engineers, between designers, between the leadership, between the marketing, between the operations? Everybody has different priorities, and trying to understand how decisions are made becomes extremely important. The third one is customer feedback. And this is more about the existing customers. What do customers want to do? What are they liking? What do they want to do? What do they not want to do? What are they struggling to do? All of these questions basically comes down to customer feedback of existing users. The next would be market research. Now, customer feedback and market research sort of, pretty much is the same thing. But in this case, market research is specifically talking to users who are going to be potential users, right? Or if you're releasing a new product, you're increasing the product offerings, you're trying to target a brand new set of users who have a very different use case, you probably want to do market research as well, right? Because you need to understand what is it that you're actually solving. What is the overall problem statement? And finally is user testing, right? Now, this isn't just about prototyping. This could be A/B testing. It could be a bunch of things, right? This is to ensure that people in the company or people who run the company understand the design. They don't have any problems. And at the same time, you want to do user testing with a lot of other people outside of the company. Basically, your potential customers could be a small group, could be, launching the redesign in phases. It could be a bunch of things, right? User testing also plays a very critical role in making design decisions. Now, I want to take a step back and talk about a lot of designers who are junior designers who pick up these redesign projects. Now, you are just a single designer who is going to try to redesign an app for your portfolio and case study, right? Now, like I said, there are 5 things a company has to do in order to redesign an app, and it's a lot of work. But you as a designer probably can have access to only one of these things, which is customer feedback. You may not understand what are the business goals, you may not understand what are the company's priorities, you may not understand market research, and you definitely may not have the ability to do enough user testing in order to validate your design decisions, right? Of course, customer feedback to an extent by looking at things online, looking at comments, looking at app store ratings, or maybe you're a user of the app itself and you have problems using the app, right? So there's a very high chance that out of these 5, you as a designer trying to redesign an app may have access to only one of these things. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that when you are in a situation like this, you have to make assumptions and you have to set constraints because you don't know what is the reality of what happens inside the company and how decisions are made. You have to make assumptions and set constraints when you are redesigning a mobile app, right? And I'm specifically talking about a case over here where you're trying to do something for your case study, where you're doing something for your portfolio, right? That's the main intention. And what that means is that the end result can only be partially correct. You will never know what is the right design unless you understand from the company what are the company goals, how decisions are made, and what are the company priorities, and what research data do they have to make decisions, right? So this also applies to me. When I redesigned the Fold Money app, I had to set a lot of constraints and make a lot of assumptions. And because I'm a hardcore user of the app and I use the app on a regular basis, I can only make a few set of assumptions because I understand the target user to an extent, right? So I have only been able to do this entire redesign considering that I have very less information. But if I did have the entire information that goes into when a company is doing a redesign, the end result could be completely different, right? So I want to make sure that this expectation is set for people. Now, finally, let's talk about Fold Money. Now, I've gone ahead and redesigned the entire app from the ground up, every single feature, every single important thing that's there in the app. And if you want to access it, you can go to learnproduct.design. And if you are a member, you get access to the 6th chapter, as you can see over here, which is redesigning a mobile app. This should be open right now, and you should be able to access all the videos. I've got around 15 videos, and I might add a few more videos in the future if Fold Money introduces new features or, does something different about it. I might update it, but you can access all the 15 videos right now, and you will also get access to the Figma file as well, which I will take you through in each single video, right? So you can use the Figma file, see how I've constructed screens, go through the entire documentation and understand how I made certain decisions. There might be a lot of things that you can learn from. However, if you are not a member of the guide and you don't want to take access, I will still be uploading 1 video per week on YouTube, but then that will take around 4 months for you to actually go ahead and access all the content. And you will also not have access to the Figma file, right? So for free users, you can access 1 video per week on YouTube. And I've tried to keep it fair for everybody, ensuring that there's a little bit of an advantage for people who have access to the guide, but at the same time, you're not really losing out on much if you are not a member. So I hope you all find that decision to be fair. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the website and understand a little bit about the company and the product before we go ahead and critique the entire app. Okay, so now let's look at the website and understand the product in a lot more detail. Okay, so It basically says that Fold securely connects your bank accounts and gives you a clear picture of your finances. So, of course, all the information is coming from your bank account. That is pretty much the primary source, which is pretty much obvious as well. That's something that we would expect. All right. Okay. And then it does basically all this stuff. They've got a web app, which you're not going to look at right now. Now over here, so it says stop recording expenses manually. Basically, Fold automatically pulls the expenses from your bank accounts and categorizes them. Now this automatic categorization, or basically tagging as what Fold calls it, is probably the most important thing ever for this product to even exist, because everything happens after something is categorized. Now in your bank statement or in your bank app that you regularly use, you can either know if it's an income or an expense. But what Fold Money does is that it goes ahead and categorizes it, because without categorization, there is absolutely no analysis you can do. There is nothing that you can infer from. So this entire tagging mechanism they have, or the algorithm, or the F1 engine that they sort of call it, is probably the most important thing ever. And if that itself fails, then there is no point of having this app itself. Now, I believe that the tagging system is really good, and I haven't tested it out, very much, but I'm going to assume that the tagging system is good. Of course, sometimes it may not be able to tag every single transaction, and that's absolutely okay. But as long as it does a proper tagging of whatever it tags, then that's absolutely fine, right? Incorrect tagging is definitely not acceptable. At least, whatever you tag, tag it correctly, right? Now, we're not going to discuss about the tagging mechanism or, the engineering aspect of it, because that has nothing to do with product design. But this is probably the most important thing. This is probably the biggest USP of the product. All right, cool. Let's go forward. They say something about spreadsheet. This, I think, okay. So basically, these are a bunch of features. So you can add notes, regular stuff. You can bookmark transaction groups. This is a very interesting feature, which we're going to look at a little bit later. Of course, it does solve a very specific use case. I believe not everybody is going to be using this, but it's a very niche feature, and probably going to be used only by a small percentage of users. I might be totally wrong, but that's just my assumption. And then you can track refunds. I mean, this is all right. This is something that you can sort of do, in your regular bank app as well, but not a big deal, right? Okay. Then of course you can search. Now there are a lot of apps, basically there are a lot of banking apps, HDFC, ICICI, Kotak, Axis or whatever, and they all allow you to search. I haven't tested the search in those bank apps. Actually, maybe they do a better job. I don't really know, but search is something that's pretty obvious and should be there in an app like this. Searching for your transaction should be really cool. We're going to dive very deep into the entire search experience of the app itself. We're going to look at benchmarking. We're going to look at patterns. We're going to look at UI. We're going to look at what makes a really good search experience. We're going to look into all of that in a dedicated video, but it's important to just keep that in the mind, right? So basically you can type in the name of the thing, you can type in the category, or even you can even type in the value, and that should go ahead and search things. So we're going to look into all of that a little bit later. Then they have something called as the cash flow. Now, this is something that confused me quite a bit when I started using the app, because first of all, the word cash flow itself sounds very intimidating. It's more of an accounting and a financial term. It's not really something, layman people or, regular users, use on a day-to-day basis. It's not a terminology they use, but we're going to look at that cash flow and understand what that really is, because in the end, to a normal consumer or a normal user of the app, expense is pretty much, outflow of cash, and an income is an inflow of cash, right? To them, it's pretty much the same thing. So why is there differentiation? We're going to look into all of that later. And is that differentiation even needed is a question that we have to answer, right? But that's something that's there that we can look at. Okay. They also have the web app, and the web app is currently in beta. I have access, I've looked at it, and it also needs a lot of work. But if you really want me to redesign the entire web app and look into that and go into the details, definitely subscribe and leave a comment and a like on the video saying that you want me to make a dedicated video series on the redesigning the entire web app, not just the mobile app, but the entire web app as well. Right? So subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Okay. Amazing. Then you can go ahead and download and share bank statements. Not really a big deal. You can probably do that, in the native app, in your regular bank app as well. Bank details, I think we can find this as well. corporations wish for the cash flow management tools that we made for you. Now, I don't really know why they're using the word corporations, because this is probably individuals who are using it. And again, cash flow is a very complicated term for normal people. It just confuses people, I would say, if it's not complicated, because incoming is income, outgoing and invested is basically, expense, right? Investment is not really an expense, but still, for them, for a lot of people, it is an expense if you think about it from a financial sense, right? But for some reason, they want to keep invested as a separate category, and that's all right. Obviously, it makes sense for some people. Then I think this is pretty much talking about the web app, Command plus K, and other modern tools that don't really know what this is. I think this is basically the search experience. But anyway, basically, if you want to read their goal to separate anxiety from money, Tom and Jerry, Jim and Pam, chai and biscuits are examples of desirable pair. An example of a desirable pair is money and anxiety. All right, there's some information over here which is not really relevant at the moment. Yeah, that's about it, right? So what does this all mean? So if we come back and look at the entire product, we need to understand what is the core problem statement. Now, of course, we have to dive into a lot more detail, right? But what is the core problem statement that this app is trying to solve? Why does this app even exist? Now, I can probably put it into two things, which is lack of awareness of your finances and poor financial responsibility, right? These are pretty much the same thing, but we can sort of separate them into two to make things a little bit more simpler to understand, right? People don't know what they're doing with their money. People don't know where their money is being spent, and they don't really understand what they're doing. And that leads to bad habits, and you don't really care and ensure that you're spending the money the intended way that you want to, right? And we also need to ask, who are you solving for, right? Because pretty much everybody has a bank account, everybody spends money, everybody earns income, everybody has it, right? So who are you actually solving for? Who's going to use this app? And that comes down to two sort of personas, if I were to put it at a very broad level. People who really want the details, people who really want to know the nitty-gritties of every single thing, people who actually care about every single detail, and people who want to do things where the offerings are not available in the regular bank apps that we have, right? Now, not everybody is going to fall into these two categories, and only the people who fall into these categories will probably want to use the app, right? And of course, we can make assumptions that they're going to be tech-savvy people, they're going to be very smart people, they understand technology, they know what to do with their finances, they have an action plan. It could be multiple reasons, right? And again, here I'm making a bunch of assumptions based on all the customer feedback that I've seen and based on me being a target user as well, right? And if we were to categorize, the core features or the offerings or basically the use cases of the app, it's like you want to overview of your finances, you want to search for transactions, you want categories of transactions to understand what's happening with your money, and of course, budgeting and analysis, which becomes a really big part, right? Now, the current Fold Money app is structured in such a way that we can only do the first three things. Budgeting is not a feature that they actually have today, and it is extremely important that they have a feature like this. I think they're working on it. I'm not entirely sure, but because they don't have budgeting as a concept, I'm going to be focusing on these core three things. Now, they also have two new things, which is credit cards and investment that is going to be coming soon. At the time of making this video, this isn't live to the general public. I only have access to the, the beta credit cards feature. So I might be making a separate video on that, but depending on when you're watching this video, I might have released new videos, or, the Fold Money app might look completely different, right? So just want to put out that disclaimer. So what we'll do now is we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at the Fold Money app. We're going to look at the entire app, and I'm going to critique the entire app at a very overall level. Of course, I'm going to have very specific dedicated videos for each part of the app. We're going to dive into so much detail and understand how do we rethink every single thing from the ground up. So without any further ado, let's look into the app. All right, so now I'm in the app. And we're going to go ahead and look at some of the things that we really feel like we need to fix and what are the things that are really standing out. Of course, I'm going to look at each single feature, each single user flow, detail by detail in dedicated videos. But right now, we're going to do a simple overall critique of the entire app and see if it is actually really helpful. What are the things that are missing? What are the things that need to be fixed? We're going to look at interactions. We're going to look at UI. We're going to look at UX. We're going to look at, the entire, we're going to look at this from a product perspective as well. And we're going to see if this is actually solving a problem. But again, just to clarify, I'm going to do this all with the overview level, and we're going to dive into the details in dedicated videos. All right. Now, first of all, as you can see, this is not my current balance. I've turned on fake data. So if you come over here, you can turn on fake data. So this is not really my balance. And of course, this is not an account that I use on a regular regular basis anymore. This is sort of like my, dormant account, if you can sort of call it that. But anyway, so starting off, we see the current balance, which is probably the most important thing ever. Maybe if not the most important, it is the most obvious thing that we would want to see, the current balance. It's a financial app. It tracks your account balance. So of course, that has to be there. Now, the thing that I would probably question is, do we need to see the graph, and also do we need to have the dates of, basically November 5th to December 5th, right? Now, this is not really like a stock market app where you actually will go through, the stock prices and the listing and then the starting and the ending price. This is the current balance. So it doesn't matter how the graph, really looks like. It has absolutely no value, right? So should we show this graph is something that we really have to think about, because at the moment, if you see the graph, it's not really explaining anything, to be very honest, right? It's just there as a visual element and it's not really adding any value. So that's something that we probably want to think about. And of course, you can add multiple bank accounts to fold money. I'm just looking at a single use case where there is one single bank account attached. When we get into the dedicated videos, I'll show you how it looks when we have two accounts attached, and how the UI looks for that. All right. Now, moving down, we have something called as the spending summary. Now, this is obviously one of the most important things. People want to see where you're spending money on, or basically where they are spending their money on. And of course, using that entire F1 engine tracking system, it's going to help Fold Money categorize your transactions for you. Now, as you can see over here, it only shows you the top 5, and then it shows you the untagged transactions. Now, this is something that I want to question. What is the problem with showing all of them, right? Now, of course, there might be a situation where you might have had 15 categories that you have spent in, and obviously showing 15, all of them over here, is too big of a pain. But again, the question is this something that we have to see right up front, right? Now, of course, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't, but these are all the questions that are coming into my head. When you come down here to the filters, or maybe before we go here to the filters or whatever the editing is, I can tap on it and we're going to get this view. Now, first of all, there is a very big disconnect, because what I saw over here was the spending summary for 2023. But when I tapped over here, it is showing me for December 2023, right? So suddenly I see there are no spendings, which sort of is quite unintuitive, right? So I'm going to go to the filters, and here itself, there's a big mess over here, and we really have to fix this. For example, if I want to select all the categories for 2023, I have to choose this option called as all months in the month section. And over in the year, I have to select 2023. So now this is a very weird pattern. And the first time I used it, I was really confused as to how this even works, right? Because ideally, when I select 2023 here in the year column, I just want to select 2023. But it's weird that I have to select 2023 and I have to come over here and choose all months. Now, I have a dedicated video. We're going to look into this in detail. And of course, we will look at, benchmarking, and we're going to see how other apps do it. But I know for a fact that this is absolutely confusing, all right? But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and apply this. And here we're going to see a list of all the categories. So I've got like 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, I think around 10 categories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 8 categories we've got, right? So this is pretty much fine. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because if we go here to the filters, we have an option to select specific categories. So basically, it's saying show custom tags, which are basically custom categories. And the problem here is that why do we need to give this feature to users? Because not everybody is going to want to use this, right? What people usually want to see is all the categories that they're spending in, right? Now, again, as you can see over here, it reset the entire thing. So I have to do this every single time I do it, which is pretty annoying. But anyway, when we come over here, let's say I'm sort of want to track medical expenses or food expenses, right? I don't really have to set that as a separate tag and show that over here on the home screen, right? It's not really something that a lot of users will sort of do. So is there a need for this sort of a feature where, we look at only tags and select specific tags? That's something I'm even going to question, because the more number of features you give, the more complicated it's going to get for the users, right? You want to reduce the number of features as much as possible while at the same time maximizing the value you're giving, right? But anyway, let's come back over here. And this is something really cool that I could probably show you over here. For example, here I'm selecting the data for current year. But let's say I choose current month, all right? And I come over here and I close this. It doesn't really make the changes, right? Because if I turn this back on, it says that current year again. What basically I have to do is select current month, go back, click on the top right, which is basically the check mark, and then it updates that, which is super weird, right? Because if you're letting me dismiss, that means that you should automatically apply the changes, right? So that's again an interaction problem over there. But anyway, let's turn this back on. Okay. And a couple of small UI things over here. For example, show data has two options and it's inside, this list item, but then show data as over here, numbers and percentage, that is not in a list item like this, right? So why the inconsistency over there? All right. But anyway, let's come back again here. I have to turn this back on, which is super annoying. It should apply the changes for me automatically, to be honest. All right. Anyway, and we come over here again, have to turn this back on. This is super annoying. All right. And when I tap on, let's say personal, this is what I see. Now, here is the most weird thing, right? So when I tap on personal, it shows me no expenses, right? Which is super weird because I saw, 6,827, whatever it is. But that apparently is in a different month. So I have to swipe all the way back over here to view that information. Now, this is super unintuitive, right? Let's try another one, right? Let's go to Lent, all right? And when I come over here, it's 0. No expenses recorded for the month, right? But the thing here is that I am looking for all months, right? And ideally, I would want to see the list of all expenses that I spent, which I basically gave out as money. But for that, I have to do a lot of work where I have to come over here and look at this graph and swipe. And this is obviously not the best experience. Because the moment when I tap on something and, you show me nothing, it is super confusing, right? So this is something that definitely has to be fixed, all right? So coming back to the home screen over here, this is one thing. Now, another thing that I want to see over here is the total of my expenses. How much did I actually spend in 2023 or for that particular month? There is absolutely no way for me to find out how much did I actually spend over here because here I don't see the total. And here also I don't see the total. And even if I come over here and choose all months, I don't see the total. I only see the categories. How can there not be a total over here, right? The weirdest thing here is that I have to scroll all the way down to this section called as cash flow to see that. Now, here is where things get a lot confusing for me. Now, cash flow is typically a financial term. It's used by accountants. It's used in the world of tax. Now, for a normal user, expenses is basically outgoing. Incomes is basically incoming. Now here, when you see the concept of incoming, it could mean two things. It could mean the money that you got as salary, or basically, whatever you get money from. It is basically the rent that you could get. It could be a business income. It could be whatever it is. It is your salary. But at the same time, it is also the money somebody is giving you for some reason. Let's say that you paid, your friend some money for some reason. You lent him some money the previous month, and now he's paying it back to you this month. That will end up coming as an incoming thing, but that's not necessarily your income. So here, when you have to look at incoming and outgoing, that's more of a financial need when you're sort of filing tax returns or when you're filing your income tax return or whatever it is. That's when this concept of incoming and outgoing is needed. But for pretty much 99% of the users, or pretty much even 100% of the users, they just want income versus expenses. Just because your friend paid you some money or you got some money doesn't mean it's an income. Now, of course, a dividend, capital gains, sale of property, sale of things like that, anything that is basically an actual income is supposed to be considered as an income. But just because you got some money from your friend is not considered income, right? So this concept of separating incomes and expenses and outgoing and incoming is, I believe, definitely confusing for a lot of users. Because if you see over here, it also says incoming, outgoing, invested, and left, right? Now this left concept, it also is something that's super confusing, and this would make sense when you have the concept of budgeting. Now budgeting doesn't even exist in the app today, so this concept of having left itself is weird. Now basically what left means is your incoming minus outgoing minus invested. Now the first time I looked at left, I felt like it was a typo or it was a mistake. Ideally, I would have chosen a better word called as savings or something like that. But again, do people care about how much you saved? No, they don't. They obviously care about how much they earn, how much they spent, and how much is left in their bank account, right? And this current balance is what is more important for them. So this amount of left is really not important, because let's take a scenario where the incoming is 1 lakh rupees. You spent 2 lakh rupees because, let's say you had to undergo some expenses. So obviously 1 lakh went from your incomes from the current month and 1 lakh went from your savings. You basically didn't save anything. Now that's okay because people don't really care how much they saved. In the end, how much balance do they have in their bank account is what is more important. So this concept of left itself is super confusing, and on top of that, this entire cash flow itself is super confusing. Because when I see expenses, I just want to see the total right here. Why is it so complicated for me to see how much did I earn, how much did I invest, and how much did I save? Finding that information is super complicated, and that is something that I have to see in the first level itself. Now, when I tap on cash flow, what you see over here is something that's super unique and complicated. You've got this super complex chart with a bunch of colors, with a lot of information, to be very honest. And this is going to be one thing that I'm going to really point out. As you can see, you have 3 dots. You've got a green dot, you've got a blue dot, and you've got a red dot. Now, the green dot says 97% less as compared to the last month. Now, what I am as a user going to do is associate 97% less with the green dot, right? Which means you're saying that 97% less of what? Of incomes is good, which is not really correct, because if you got less income, that's a bad thing, right? So what they're trying to do here is connect the green dot with incoming and not connecting the green dot with 97% less. And if you do the opposite, so if you go to the red dot, which says 100% less, all right, now when you have less outgoing, that's a good thing. But that is represented with a red dot over here, which is super duper confusing, right? Because the red, blue, and green dots have to be associated with incoming, outgoing, and invested, and not really whether it's a positive or a negative, right? But the visual representation over here is super confusing. Now, even this chart really isn't really helpful, because what do I want to do here as a user, right? First of all, I want to see the actual value. Now, those font sizes are itself too small. And the second thing is I want to sort of compare incoming and outgoing, with invested, or basically combine, or sort of compare incoming, investing, and outgoing in a much simpler way. This chart really isn't helping because I see too much going on over here. All right. And I think there is definitely a better way to make this a lot simpler, very quicker to understand. I can even expand this, and the entire UI changes over here. We've got this thing called chart tools. We've got this variable. We've got a bunch of things over here, right? And I don't even think people are using this feature, to be very honest, right? And it shouldn't be this complicated, right? And you've got cash flow by month. You've got cash flow by year, and a lot of people wouldn't even come over here and see this, right? There has to be a simpler way. There's too much navigation. There's too many buttons that I have to click to figure out, what I really have to do. All right. So there's a lot that we have to fix. Next, we can then move on to the second tab, which is basically transactions. Now, transactions itself, this is a whole big feature itself. There's got a bunch of things, but I'm going to point out a lot of things that are really bothering me. The first thing is the entire visual language. The screen is super cluttered. There is so much going on. There are too many borders. There's too many colors. There is too many shades of gray, basically. There are too many elements. And this entire card layout that you see over here is not really scalable. And I have examples in screenshots where it was completely broken. And we're going to look at that in a dedicated video. But I think here itself, there is too much going on. It's super visually cluttered. All right. Then you've got this concept of groups. Now, here you have all. I just created a test group. And then we have this concept of groups. Now, this itself is super weird from a navigation standpoint, because under groups, you have test group. So test group and groups cannot be at the same level, right? This is pretty much basics of design. Now, another weird thing that I see over here is when I tap on test group or when I tap on groups, the filter icon on the top and the search bar is, if I tap on it, it's disabled. You can't do stuff like that in a mobile app, right? If you have a search bar, it should always be active. If you have icons on the right, it should always be active. You can't disable them, which means they're trying to find solutions to problems that should not have even existed, which means that we need to rethink and restructure the entire navigation and the entire way this works so that we don't have problems where you have to disable elements, right? That's not really how you're supposed to design experiences, all right? Now, when you look at test group, we see a lot of things over here. So we have 6 transactions, and then we have 1 transaction. Now, first of all, one of it is supposed to be positive, one of it is supposed to be negative, but here both of them are positive. That's I'm assuming that's a bug. And then we have a list of all the transactions. But when I tap on more, I see the exact same screen. The only difference here is that I can choose a particular range and I can add a transaction. Why do we have to do that in 3 different places, right? So this is one, this is the second one, And if I go to groups and tap on test group, I see the third one. So I can see the same screen in 3 different places. And why are there 3 entry points for it, right? This also is really confusing to users, all right? When I tap on create a new group, we get this weird screen, which definitely does not look polished at all. It does not sort of follow any guidelines or doesn't even look like a native iOS experience. And so this definitely needs a lot of work. But let's look at the search experience, right? When I tap on search transactions, all right? Let's say I tap on Netflix, for example, all right? So it's going to basically find me all results for Netflix. And as you can see here, it says for this year, I have 8 transactions of 7,716. Now, when I tap on it, what it weirdly does is it gives me this carousel view of all the transactions. Now, if you think of the use case, right? Basically, I want to see what are the transactions very quickly. I'm not looking for the details of a transaction. I'm looking for the actual transaction. So what I would expect is when I tap on this here, I should be able to see a list view, basically a vertical list view of all the transactions because I'm looking for something super specific, right? Now, another thing is let me type back Netflix again and let's see if we can get it, all right? This UI itself is super cluttered, right? Because we have too many levels, we have too many background colors. It's super hard to focus on something, right? And when I tap on test group, you can see that the entire thing gets disabled, which is definitely an unintuitive and a weird experience, to be very honest. All right. Now, here's another thing. In this text group, if I have, let's say, 6 transactions, which are basically expenses, for example, there is absolutely no way for me to see what are these expenses because I don't want to see all the expenses. I just want to filter and look at those 6 transactions. How do I do that? Tapping on it doesn't do anything. If I go to more, also I can't really do it. If I come here to settings, I don't have the option. If I tap on all months, this is basically time details. How do I find that transaction which is only the incomes or only the expenses? There's absolutely no way to do that. And that feature should obviously exist. All right. So that's a very big problem with the search experience. Now, if I tap on the filters, you can see we have this filter screen, which to be honest, first of all, just by looking at first impression, there are probably 6-7 different gray colors over here. All of them have different patterns. So for example, incoming, outgoing, and both, that's basically like a segmented control. Selecting tags and icons is a different one. And I don't think using the word icon is, sort of the right word over here. You have tags and that's about it. Icon is a very design term. Nobody, for a user, you can't use the word icon. Then you have the range, all right? Now, they've used a slider for date range, which is definitely the most unconventional or the most unintuitive way. That's not how people select it. Because if I want to select a specific day, let's say I want to select today, I have to go to presets and I have to select today, right? If I want to select a particular week, I have to come over here, right? And obviously, if I want to select, let's say a particular month, let's say I want to select the month of June, right? How do you do that, right? Coming over here and selecting this is not the right way to do it, right? And I can't even select, the month of June, right? I can only do from May to June, but I can't do only June. And if I come here to presets, I don't know how to search for that, right? So if I want to search for transactions that happened only in May, I have no way to do that. How do I search for transactions in May? That is super confusing. And I don't even think that ability exists. If I want to find the transactions in May, what I have to do is I have to come down here to spending summary. I have to come down here to December. I have to come down here to choose May, apply that, and then I see all of this, right? But this is not what I want to do. I just want to see all the transactions for the month of May. How do I do that? I don't want to see it in the month of categories. I just want to see chronologically, right? And there's absolutely no way to do that. So if I come over here and let's say we close everything up and, let's try to do it, right? Now, the most weirdest thing is that you actually can do it, but it's a super hidden feature. I can tap on it and now I can select it. That is super weird. I shouldn't be able to tap so many times to figure out how do I select for the month of May, right? So first of all, you're using a slider. Then you have these presets where it's not there and nobody's going to think that they can tap on it to open this up, right? So they're trying to find solutions to problems that shouldn't even exist in the first place. And of course, we're going to look at this entire date range picker in a different video and we're going to do a lot of benchmarking and we're going to see what is the best experience. But slider for date range, definitely not the right experience, all right? What else? We've got a bunch of these other options, which is fine. Nothing too crazy about it. All right. And another thing this reminds me of is I come over here. If I come down here to spending summary, all right, I don't have an income summary. Where do I find the incomes, right? Because I might be getting rental income. I might be getting, probably could be salary income. I could be getting freelance income. I could be getting business income. I could be getting a lot of it, right? So why is it only spending summary? Why don't I have a breakdown of all my incomes? That entire feature of incomes itself is not available. Now, of course, it is there, but I have to come down here to cash flow. And then I have to choose incoming transactions, but then I just see the transactions. I want the entire breakup that you did for expenses, the same thing for incomes as well, but that feature doesn't even exist over here. Now, this is definitely not an engineering constraint because we obviously have all the information. So this shouldn't be a problem to build because if you're doing this for expenses, you should be able to do it easily for income, right? Now, the weirdest thing over here is that because I am looking for incomes for the month of, December, and I come over here and if I choose February, it changes it to February even though I came from December. Now that is a little bit of a weird experience for me, but I'm going to let that go. And that's absolutely okay for now. Maybe it's a weird experience for some people, maybe it's not, but it's hard to judge at the moment. And we're obviously going to look into the details of this a little bit later. But anyways, I'm going to go back and come back to the transactions tab. Now we can look at the tagging concept. Now the tagging concept works fine, but I think from a visual standpoint, it needs a lot of effort because the search bar is probably the most important thing. And it is sort of getting, sandwiched between a bunch of other things. And the search experience also we can, really clean up. But for now, we're just going to leave that as it is. I don't like the fact that, there's a lot of placeholders. For example, if you look at a particular transaction, the way the word received from looks, the way the word tag looks, it's very different. I can tap on tag, but I can't really tap on received from. I have to come over here and I have to type it over here. It's a big pain, right? So I'm going to go ahead and close this up. We're going to look at the transaction details a little bit later, all right? But overall, I hope you can understand that if I have to find some information, it is actually taking me a lot of time to figure out where do I actually get this information, all right? And does it even make sense to separate this summary from cash flow? Why can't we combine both of them? Because they are connected to each other, right? It's not like they're two separate things, right? So that's something we'll definitely look at. And the third tab is basically this investments tab, which is, first of all, looks super weird because it says coming soon, but then you've got this disabled button that says begin. Definitely this screen is not polished. I wouldn't even have this tab, to be very honest, because it's not really adding any, you're unnecessarily taking up space in the tab. You could probably fill that with something else. And then you've got profile. The profile, this looks a lot better than the version that they had before, but I'm not going to comment too much on this because this is where, the first two tabs is where people are going to be spending, most of their time on. So overall, as you can see, there are a lot of things that we have to fix in the app. Visually itself, I'm going to clean this app very much, set up a proper text style, set up a really decent design system, set up a few basic colors and, make sure it's as clean as possible. Now, of course, the visual direction they've chosen itself is a little complicated because you've got strokes around elements, you've got two color surfaces, and then sometimes you also have shadows. So if I come here to tag, you've got shadows as well. And you've got this different corner radius, as you can see, for the the entire list item, the corner radius is different, and for the search bar, the corner radius is different. So this direction itself is a lot problematic, but I will abide by these constraints and design the app and try to clean it up as much as I can. And I'm going to show you throughout the entire course how much of a problem this visual direction will create. You're going to face alignment issues. You're going to find too many surfaces. And, I'm going to also show you the various types of visual directions you can take, right? So we're going to clean up every single thing, right from interactions, right from UX, right from content, and make sure that this app is a lot more helpful than it currently is, because I definitely would want to use this app, but at the moment it's not really meeting my needs. I have to think way too much to get the information that I want. So that's the entire overview and basically the entire set of comments that I have for the app. And of course, in the separate videos moving forward, we're going to go into the details. We're going to look at each single feature. We're going to break it down. We're going to create personas. We're going to create user flows. We're going to go ahead and sort of find the best way to solve each problem and each feature. We're going to question every single decision. We're going to see how to make design decisions, and finally see how to make this a much better app. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment sections down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. And see you guys in my next video. So then take care and bye-bye.